In the heart of the jungle, where survival is written in tooth and claw, something happened that no textbook, no scientist, no rule of the wild could have predicted. It began with despair. A lioness named Amara, her roars breaking the sky as her cub lay trapped in a collapsing crater, water rising with every passing second. But just when the countdown to tragedy seemed unstoppable, the impossible stepped out of the shadows. A massive silverback gorilla named Congo, a giant of the forest, a being no lioness should ever trust, answered her cries. And in that moment, predator and primate crossed the line that nature had drawn between them. What followed was not just a rescue. It was a miracle that would forever change how we understand love, hope, and the bonds that unite all living creatures. The cry echoes through the wilderness, not of dominance or power, but of desperation and faith. Imagine the impossible. A lioness, queen of the savannah, drops to her belly before a towering silverback gorilla, the guardian of the forest. Her muscles tremble, her golden flanks pressed low into the wet earth. Not from fear, but from pleading. Her amber eyes, glowing like molten fire under storm clouds, shine with something primal, yet utterly human. Hope. She roars, not in threat but in heartbreak, her sound breaking the silence like the toll of a cathedral bell. She is not roaring at him, she is begging him. Somewhere nearby, her cub, the fragile heartbeat of her world, is trapped beneath rubble, his tiny cries fading into suffocating stone. The gorilla stares back, his massive chest heaving, his eyes filled with a conflicted fire no scientist could ever measure. What he does next defies every law we've written about nature, survival, and instinct. It is a moment that will leave experts speechless and humanity humbled, because in this raw corner of creation, two species met at the intersection of compassion. And in that place, the line between beast and human disappeared. The lion shall lie down with the lamb, and a child shall lead them. These words seem like prophecy as the story begins, setting in motion a miracle that will not only change the fate of one cub, but rewrite the very definition of love. And before we plunge deeper into this unforgettable tale, pause for a heartbeat. Tell us where you're watching from, and let this moment remind you that when animals and humanity touch, the world itself shifts. To understand this extraordinary encounter, we must return 2 days earlier, to a dawn wrapped in mist, where hope was just beginning to breathe again. The Zambezi Wildlife Sanctuary in Zimbabwe was alive with the hum of destiny. After 3 long years of court battles, relentless petitions, and global pressure, the final group of captive lions was finally being released into the wild. Conservationists from around the world gathered silently, holding their breath as the moment approached. At the center of this miracle stood Dr. Elena Rodriguez, her hands trembling slightly around a clipboard, though her heart beat louder than any pen could record. Before her waited a reinforced transport cage, its steel frame shaking softly under the restless shift of its occupant. Amara, the lioness whose life had been sculpted by cruelty, yet whose soul refused to break. Once a prisoner in a shadowy breeding facility, forced to live in concrete silence, she now stood on the threshold of freedom. Her coat, golden yet scarred, bore the map of her suffering. But her eyes, once dimmed, now carried the blazing flame of rebirth, and within her story beat another. Her cub Django, born during her rehabilitation, a symbol of resilience wrapped in soft fur. The air was electric as the steel doors clicked open. For a heartbeat, the world stood still. Then Amara emerged, the sunlight catching her coat like molten fire. Her muscles rippled like carved marble, every step announcing the return of royalty to her ancestral land. Behind her stumbled Django, his oversized paws clumsy but filled with boundless joy. He pounced at butterflies, swiped at drifting leaves, and pressed himself close to his mother's flank, reminding her, and everyone watching, that the future was alive. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. The wilderness seemed to echo the verse, as though the trees themselves were whispering, "She is free, and her story is not finished yet." The chosen release site was nothing less than paradise. Mana Pools National Park, a UNESCO World Heritage jewel, where rivers carved silver veins through emerald forests and life pulsed in harmony. Towering acacia woodlands stretched like ancient cathedrals, offering shade and shelter. Herds of impalas moved like golden rivers across the plains, while elephants lifted their trunks to the wind, greeting newcomers with low rumbles. The air was rich with birdsong, and from the springs flowed water clear enough to mirror heaven itself. But what made this land remarkable was not just its beauty, but its diversity. Recent shifts in climate had brought new travelers. Mountain gorillas, migrating down from higher elevations, building their families here, carving a fragile peace alongside predators. And among them, a giant walked like a legend. Congo, a silverback gorilla nearly 7 feet tall. His fur dusted with silver light, his frame a living mountain. Researchers had long marveled at his wisdom, his calm leadership, and his uncanny sensitivity. He had become the quiet guardian of the sanctuary, a being whose intelligence transcended the lines of species. But paradise carries its shadows. Beneath the surface, danger stirred in silence. Weeks of relentless rain had weakened the limestone bones of the land, hollowing caverns beneath the soil. What looked like solid earth was in truth a fragile mask, ready to collapse. And fate had chosen the very ground Amara and Django were exploring as the stage for a test that would shatter every boundary we thought existed. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Little did they know that valley was opening beneath their paws. It happened without warning. The earth groaned like a wounded beast, splitting under Django's tiny paws. In a blink, the cub slipped into a jagged crevice, his cries echoing from the darkness below. Amara's roar ripped through the air, raw and primal. Her body pressed low as she clawed desperately at the earth. And then, the forest stirred. Congo emerged from the shadows, his massive silhouette framed against shafts of broken sunlight. His eyes locked onto the lioness. And for a moment, the world froze. Predator and primate, two rulers of different kingdoms, stood face to face. Amara bowed low, her muscles trembling, her roar breaking into a sound that was not threat, but prayer. Something ancient passed between them. Not words, but something deeper. The gorilla moved, with impossible strength and delicate care. He reached into the crevice, his giant hand curling gently around Django's trembling body. The cub squeaked, fragile yet alive, as Congo lifted him into the light. He placed Django before his mother and stepped back, his great chest rising with the rhythm of peace. Amara pressed her face to her cub, licking the dust from his fur, her eyes glistening with gratitude that needed no language. The sanctuary workers watching from afar wept openly, their cameras forgotten. In that sacred silence, predator and guardian had touched hearts across species, across time. It was not instinct, it was love. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. The lioness and the gorilla parted as quietly as they had met, their bond carved into eternity. Django lived, Amara's line continued, and Congo returned to his forest. A legend reborn. This was not just an animal rescue, not just an emotional true story. It was a viral miracle written in the language of nature itself. A heartwarming animal video that would ripple through human hearts forever. And so, in the end, the wild did not divide them. It united them. The beauty of the wilderness can often mask its most sinister truths. What seemed like paradise, a land chosen carefully for rebirth, carried within it the silent countdown of catastrophe. Rusted metal supports, once designed to hold the weight of science and progress, had long ago surrendered to time. Concrete walls, crumbling with decay, hid beneath the jungle canopy like the bones of forgotten giants, waiting for the wrong vibration to bring them down. The abandoned research station beneath Amara's paws had become a labyrinth of unstable chambers, flooded passages, and fractured tunnels. Every step she and little Django took above it was unknowingly weaving them closer to disaster. The breeze itself carried whispers of warning, faint tremors rattling through the ground, tiny pebbles rolling across cliff edges, the groaning sigh of stressed stone buried deep below. These were signs no human eye could easily see. But the earth spoke to its creatures in a language older than time, and while some animals might have felt it in their bones, Amara's heart was still full of joy, blind to the danger, too enraptured by the intoxicating freedom of her release. She padded along the ravine's edge, her muscles moving with grace, her amber eyes searching for water and prey to claim their new home. Behind her, Django bounded, clumsy and fearless, drunk on the taste of the wild. Every butterfly was a miracle, every rustling bush a mystery. He was a prince discovering his kingdom for the first time. And yet, under their paws, earth and stone strained under invisible weight, threatening to betray them at any moment. The earth is the Lord's, and everything in it, the world, and all who live in it. The verse rang true, for even this land belonged not to man, not to beast, but to the hand of creation itself. A hand that sometimes tests with storms before it heals with miracles. Far away, Dr. Elena Rodriguez and her team peered through high-powered binoculars, their hearts swelling with relief. From their elevated observation post, everything looked perfect. Amara's posture was strong, her steps steady, her body language relaxed but alert. Django's energy was boundless, his leaps and tumbles proof of a cub thriving under his mother's watch. To their trained eyes, the release appeared to be a resounding success, the culmination of years of struggle and sacrifice. Yet the distance betrayed them. What they could not see was the fragile skeleton beneath the surface. A network of limestone veins riddled with cracks, spider webbing outward as if written by an unseen hand. Decades of erosion, weeks of heavy rain, and the slow decay of man's forgotten structures had conspired together, creating a trap far deadlier than any predator Amara might face. Every paw step from Django, every playful pounce, sent vibrations echoing through underground chambers where concrete walls sweated water and rusted beams groaned under pressure. The abandoned station, once meant for conservation research, was now a death trap waiting for one innocent misstep. And fate, merciless in its timing, chose Django's laughter, his playful chase after a butterfly's delicate wings, to test the boundaries between life, death, and love. For we walk by faith, not by sight. Neither Amara nor the scientist could see the truth beneath their feet, but faith was about to meet fire in the most dramatic of ways. The moment of collapse came with a sound that seemed to split the world in two. A thunderous crack tore through the air, reverberating like the roar of an angry god. The ground shuddered, groaned, and then gave way. Django, mid-leap toward the fluttering wings of his butterfly, landed not on solid earth but on emptiness. His tiny body vanished in a blur of dust and crumbling stone, his terrified cry piercing the silence, echoing up from the dark chasm below. Amara's roar erupted instantly, her voice raw with maternal terror, her claws raking the unstable ground as she lunged toward the edge. The earth beneath her paws threatened to crumble, jagged rocks tumbling into the abyss. But she did not retreat. She peered into the newly born crater, and what she saw was a nightmare carved in steel and stone. Django lay 30 feet down, his body trembling, trapped beneath a fallen beam, his cries wet with fear. Around him, twisted concrete slabs leaned precariously. Water gushed from ruptured pipes, turning the debris into a rising pool. He was alive, but trapped in a cage of death. Amara's roars filled the valley, carrying across miles a primal hymn of anguish that no creature could ignore. For nearly an hour, she tried everything, clawing at the walls until her paws bled, dragging branches to the edge in futile attempts to build a path, pacing the rim until the ground bore deep scars from her desperate circles. She licked the air for Django's scent. She called to him ceaselessly, her roars softening into guttural murmurs of comfort, as if her voice could shield him from drowning. Yet each attempt ended in failure, and as the sun rose higher, so too did the floodwaters creeping toward her cub. Can a mother forget the baby at her breast and have no compassion on the child she has born? Amara's every roar was her answer. No, never. She would not forget. She would not abandon. But her strength alone was not enough. The hours stretched into eternity. The scorching heat of midday bore down upon Amara, baking the dust into her golden coat, turning her body into a trembling figure of desperation. Her throat, raw from endless roars, rasped with each cry. Her claws, torn and bloody, left streaks of red across the earth. Still she fought. Still she paced. Still she called. Django's cries, once strong, grew weaker, softer, each one slicing through her like a blade. The water in the underground chamber rose steadily, swirling around his frail body, forcing him to splash weakly to keep his head above the deadly flood. Every sound he made was a dagger to Amara's heart. She crouched at the edge, eyes wide, shoulders heaving, her body pulled between instinct and reason. One leap, one reckless plunge into the crater could place her beside her cub, but it would also crush him under her weight, or bury them both in a cascade of falling stone. Her mind knew the truth, but her soul screamed otherwise. Hours of anguish had turned her into a shadow of herself, dust-stained, bloodied, trembling, yet still roaring her broken hymn to the sky. And then, something happened. Her voice, ragged and raw, carried farther than she could ever know. It echoed through forest, river, and mountain, threading its way through the wilderness like an ancient song. It reached ears that understood sorrow. It stirred a heart that knew compassion. For not far away, in the shadows of the acacia grove, Congo the Silverback stirred. He rose slowly, massive frame glistening in the dying light of afternoon, his dark eyes narrowing with focus. He had heard the call. He had felt the grief. He understood. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Amara's despair had touched something greater than her own strength. Help was coming, not from man, not from the heavens, but from the most unexpected guardian of the wild. The sound of rushing water from the broken pipes wasn't just noise anymore. It was a cruel countdown. Each gurgle, each splash, marked the passing of seconds in a life-or-death race that no mother should ever face. Amara's roars had started strong, fierce, full of command, the voice of a lioness who ruled her world. But as the hours bled away and the water kept rising, her voice broke into something far more painful. It wasn't rage anymore. It was grief in motion. She threw herself again and again toward the crater's edge, heedless of danger, nearly tumbling into the same abyss where her cub was trapped. Each time loose rock slid away beneath her paws, sending her scrambling back. Her amber eyes grew wilder, less tethered to reason. They were no longer the eyes of a predator. They were the eyes of a mother, shattering in real time. As a mother comforts her child, so will I comfort you, says Isaiah 66:13. And yet here stood Amara, helpless, unable to comfort the one life she would have given everything for. By the time the sun began its descent, throwing shadows like dark scars across the disaster zone, she collapsed at the edge of the abyss. Her flanks rose and fell in ragged gasps. Her roars stopped. Silence. A silence so heavy it seemed to swallow the jungle itself. It was the silence of surrender. And then, a sound. Heavy footfalls. Deliberate. Unstoppable. They broke through the hush of despair like drums in the distance. Out of the underbrush stepped a force no one had expected. Congo, the great silverback. His figure loomed against the last light of day. Broad shoulders glistening, chest rising like the heartbeat of the earth itself. He had followed the cries, not because they belonged to his kind, but because something deeper, older, universal had stirred him. He had recognized the sound no parent could ignore, the breaking plea of a soul about to lose its child. The spirit itself intercedes for us with groanings too deep for words. And here was that intercession, walking on two massive legs. The scene he found was one that should never have existed. Predator and prey, lioness and gorilla, two monarchs of different kingdoms, brought together by tragedy. Amara raised her head, her body trembled with exhaustion. And then, she did something no scientist, no book, no rule of nature could have prepared anyone for. Slowly, she lowered herself, not in attack, but in surrender. Her body pressed low to the earth, her golden eyes fixed on Congo's. Not the fire of dominance, but the raw plea of a mother stripped bare. Then, from her throat, not a roar, but soft, broken sounds, a rhythm, a begging song. Again, she glanced at the abyss, where Django's faint cries rose from the drowning dark, then back at the gorilla. Again the sound, again the plea. She wasn't threatening. His intelligence, long underestimated, revealed itself in each motion as he wove branches together into a rope strong enough to hold his own colossal weight. This was no accident. This was engineering born of empathy. Two are better than one, for if they fall, one will lift up the other. In that jungle clearing, scripture was alive. The descent was agonizing to watch. Each step of the gorilla's weight threatened the fragile crater wall. Water surged below, the cub's cries fading into weak gasps. But Congo never wavered. Hand over hand, he moved with the patience of eternity itself. Finally, the impossible happened. His enormous hands reached Django, hands that could shatter bones, instead cradled life. Gently, impossibly gently, he lifted the cub against his chest. And in that moment, Predator's child lay safely in the arms of another species protector. When Congo emerged, pulling himself back to the surface with the weight of salvation clinging to him, the jungle itself seemed to exhale. Amara rushed forward, her body a trembling storm of maternal devotion. Licking, nudging, reassuring. Django coughed, sputtered, but his small chest rose. He was alive, against all odds, against the cruelest countdown of water and stone. He was alive. Tears streamed down the faces of the researchers hidden behind their cameras. They were not just witnesses. They were disciples of a new truth unfolding before their eyes. And yet, the story was not finished. Amara turned once more to the gorilla. This time, no begging, no fear. She walked forward with quiet reverence, and in a gesture of gratitude that broke every law written about the wild, she pressed her forehead to Congo's great hand. Predator and primate, bound not by dominance, but by respect, by love, by something higher. The wolf will live with the lamb, the leopard will lie down with the goat. And in that golden hour, words became flesh. Scientists will argue. They will publish. They will question what intelligence means, what empathy truly is. But to those who stood in that clearing, there was no debate. They had seen compassion made flesh in the most unexpected of ways. The lioness had found her miracle, not in her own strength, but in her ability to trust across the boundaries of species, to ask for help, and to be answered. And in that answer, we are reminded, love is not limited by language. Hope is not owned by humans. Compassion is a universal law, written deeper than instinct, older than time. Up next, 2 more stories are waiting on your screen. If this one pierced your heart, the others will only take you further. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell, because sometimes the wild has a message waiting for you, and you won't want to miss it. In the end, what happened at that crumbling ravine will not be remembered as a story of disaster, but as a miracle of compassion written in the language of the wild. A mother lioness, broken by despair, found hope in the unlikeliest of allies. A silverback gorilla who chose empathy over indifference, action over fear. Amara did not just regain her cub that day. She discovered that love, in its purest form, knows no boundaries of species, strength, or territory. Django's survival became more than a rescue. It became a testament that even in a world divided by instinct, the miracle of connection can rise above all. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden light over mother and cub reunited, Amara pressed her forehead to Congo's massive hand. Predator and primate bound by gratitude. In that silent gesture, the jungle itself seemed to hold its breath, witnessing a truth deeper than survival, that compassion is universal, and miracles bloom where hearts are willing to hear each other's cries.